Hey guys, today I'm here with Kris Zoller. He's a good friend of mine. He actually used to live, he's actually lived up the road a couple of times now from me. And back in the day, I think we met my first year down here. And he came and we hit it off right away. And I think we even had plans to start a pagan meadery at one point called Feast of Odin or something. What were we going to call it?
It's like Asgard meat or something like that.
Asgard mead. Yeah, that was it. So we were burning up some meat and we had this whole idea for this like Viking themed meadery. But our lives went in different directions and he's here today kind of talking about his journey to Christ and how he came to Christ because it was interesting. It kind of happened for both of us, I think around the same time. Like I think it was, for me it was like in 2021 after all the COVID craziness. And I feel like it happened around the same time and kind of unbeknownst to each other. And then we kind of like met up and we were talking and it was like, are you kind of like becoming a Christian too? And it was very interesting how our lives have kind of moved in parallel quite a bit. But anyway, yeah, man. Yeah, just let's hear your story.
Well, I guess. I mean, I don't know what the questions you have about it, but I was definitely not Christian and didn't want to be Christian and definitely didn't want to go to the traditional churches. Um, and I mean, it's pretty much my wife that guided me towards it. I
Yeah.
was just constantly being like, no, 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 that's dumb, it's stupid. Um, but then I had certain things that happened to me that that revealed it. And once you have these revelations, you can't deny them. You
Yep.
know, so I mean, one of the biggest revelations to me was I had a lot of it seemed like demonic attachments. You know,
Hmm.
where I was having out of body experiences during my dreams and
Whoa.
things like that, where yeah, they just were hitting me really hard. But I had an experience with the Theotokos, the Mother
Mhm.
Mary, um, and she came in and just was like, boom, wiped them out. And then to
Wow.
me, that was a big thing that just completely proved it to me. But there's a lot of other things that go up to that. But I don't know how you want to progress with the questions with that because it's kind of a long
Yeah,
story.
no, no, that's really interesting, man. I mean, glory be to God. That's really great. That I feel like it's like the seed is there, and it's because I had huge walls up too. I had really closed off what I thought was Christianity, and I never looking back, like I never really had a problem with Christ or with anything he said or did. It was all these other things that I associated with the church, with scandals and sort of things in even like the worship music at like a Protestant church. I never felt it. It's kind of like, and so I could intellectualize the Holy Trinity and these things, but I never, if you don't feel it, you're going to fall away. You're not going to have those roots. And that's kind of what happened to me. And then I had walls up, and yeah, it's very interesting. Kind of hear your perspective and how So was Rachel always Christian, or was it kind of something that what kind of did it for her?
So Rachel was cradle Catholic.
Uh,
So she grew up in the Catholic Church. She went to Catholic school, you know. And then I mean, just experiences in her life. She'd have to explain that to you, but just fell away from the church, got into New Age stuff. We both met together when we were into New Age types of things. Like we can create our own reality and
yeah,
we're our own God and all this stuff. The first lie that Satan said.
yeah,
Um, and so yeah, that's what we're doing, but it didn't work.
yes, that's it.
So,
Because I can't. I was in the New Age too. If I had any spirituality at all, it was that kind of New Age philosophy of like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna manifest it, and I can fix all my problems. And it's like, bro, you don't even know what your problems are. It's like you're so far removed from reality thinking that you can do it all yourself. There's definitely a very real new age to Christianity pipeline that I'm seeing in a lot of people, and that gives me hope for like Asheville because it's a new age like pagan
Yes.
hub out of anywhere in America. So it's but
Yep.
the one thing I can say about people who are like into the new age is at least you're searching, like, right? You're searching for something, you're searching for peace or some kind of, there's something more. You have this like feeling inside that believe in energy and this and that, but it's like you're not just like well, for one, at least you're not, at least if you're into the new age, you're not just kind of complacent with just whatever, you're like, oh, that's, I don't, like spirituality's whatever, what's on the TV kind of thing. Or not, I think like, so at least, if you're searching, and I believe if you search, if you truly search, eventually you're going to wind up at Christ because,
Yeah.
Christ is God and God is the ultimate reality. And so
Hmm.
all this other stuff, it ends up just being delusion and it kind of feeds our own egos, because it's not saying you have to die to yourself. It's saying, you can manifest whatever you want. And the problem
Yeah.
is we don't oftentimes know what is best for us. We want things to be easy. We want
Yeah.
pleasures. We very rarely know what's necessary for our own salvation.
Exactly. And the whole manifestation thing is, yeah, I mean, if you go into like the Hebrew text, yeah, like the word of mouth creates reality. But when Jesus came, he saw that these people were creating evil and wrong things, So what was happening is like, okay, you're creating kind of like evil things with your intentions, and it's what he had to do was show that no, you need to be glorifying God first, and then God will help you create these things. You're not the one that can do it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do anything without God, and we
Mm-hmm.
can't do anything without Jesus Christ of Nazareth. So we need him, and we need to have him guide us in our way. And if we don't, if we're trying to serve ourselves first, we're serving ourselves, which is not glorified.
Yeah, yeah, it's selfish, and like that's and so all this stuff, yeah, anything that plays to our ego is easy for us to accept, and anything that's calling us to deny ourselves is kind of flying in the face of what we want to do most of the time. And so it's almost like a tough sell. I feel like the easy sell is to say like you don't have to change, you can indulge in all your little pleasures and still have this slice of spirituality, but there's not like my personal experience, in the new age, they talk a lot about healing, healing of body, healing of, your soul, past traumas, all this. There's a lot of talk about healing, but I would, that's what I was seeking because I knew somewhere inside, like I was sick and I needed heal, but I never found it. I went down the path, yoga, meditation, and Reiki, and all these, energy channeling and this and that, and I never found it. And it was only through Christ that I found any healing at all. And it's like, and the thing is because like I didn't even know I was sick. Like I think on some base level there was things that I felt were not right. So it's like, well, okay, I need an ayahuasca ceremony, and then it'll be revealed to me these things. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's like really God will reveal those things to you if you ask him. You don't need to go drink ayahuasca. You don't need to go on another like a meditation retreat. It's like, and he'll do it as you can take it. I've found it's not like he just dumps it all on all your faults all at once, like a bad trip, when you've like eaten too many
Yeah.
mushrooms and then you're just seeing like and it's just too much. It's like,
Yeah.
he's like, now I think you can take this, now I think you can
Hmm.
see this little thing about yourself that you can improve that, or that you need to let go of. And he's gentle, like, and so, yeah, I don't know. So in your journey to Christ, like when that change started happening, what was it that like really, solidified it for you that, like Christ is God and the Bible is the word of God, and because I'm still like, it still kind of blows my mind, you know, like when I really step back and think about it, it's like angels, demons, heaven, hell, like it's all real. Like the spiritual warfare, it is when you start to put it through, when you put reality through this framework, it it explains everything. It's a complete
Yeah.
story of everything.
It's everything. I mean, I grew up, you know, Calvary Chapel, every
Mhm.
day, every Sunday going to church, but then seeing my parents, not living up to it and going through that and being like, okay, well, I think this is kind of bullshit. Excuse my French, but
Mhm.
it's just like it just didn't seem real at
Yeah.
all. And then there was other things I was like, oh, this kind of seems real, doing different drugs and things when I was younger in my teenage years, and then just being like, it's not helping at all. And then I don't know. My wife is literally the one who brought me to Christ and back to
Glory be to
Christ.
God. That's
And
beautiful.
it's amazing. I love her so much. I'm so grateful. But it's just seeing it and then you gotta feel it, but also just ask. The main thing is just say, God, can you show me?
Yeah.
I need this. Can you show me it? And he will show you. But you
Yeah.
have to humble yourself in this life that we have because there's so many other things going on. We got to do these, blah, blah, blah all over the place. But it's like we have to humble ourselves. That's the first thing. And then he will show himself and you have to accept it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But the first, a couple things that happened were, Rachel, my wife, was just getting into it and like going back into it. She was, raised Christian Catholic. Um, but we started watching these videos from Ron Wyatt that when he found all of these archaeological finds, like Noah's Ark. I mean, and I was just like, wow, this is really good evidence that there actually was an ark, you
Hmm.
know, like Noah's Ark actually existed. Sodom and Gomorrah that actually existed. There's balls of sulfur. There's literally scientific proof of these things because I needed that for myself.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Even with the Sodom and Gomorrah thing, they have found plates that are like glazed on one side, which could only happen from like extreme heat of like 4,000 degrees, like almost like putting something in a kiln.
exactly.
And it's like, well, how would this, how does this artifact exist? It's just literally
Yeah,
just glazed on one side, not the other. So there's a lot of stuff that as you start digging in, and it's interesting how each person has to come through their own way. Like some people might be able to just walk in and hear the hymns and smell the incense and like go and just feel it. And I think that's
yeah,
ultimately where you need to get. But for other people, and I feel like a lot of times for men, it's like coming through the logical way of it, like needing to make
totally.
sense on a theological, philosophical, and just total level. And then like for me, I remember in high school, I was really searching, like I was really just wanted to know, like, is there a God or not? Like, is it evolution? Is it creationism? Like, I was just researching. I went down the whole rabbit hole of, and I learned how finely tuned the universe is for our existence, and then how finely tuned Earth is for our existence, and just how miraculous it really would be to come from a single celled organism, like for that to just exist in the first place from random
Yeah,
chaos, no order, no guiding hand, to get all the way up to human beings, to being able to even contemplate such a question. So I had all these logical reasons, and it was pulling me, and we started going to this. It's kind of like what I think a Calvary church is, kind of like a well-funded, kind of like mega church, more or less, like,
yeah,
and with the whole
definitely.
rock band and like the big screen TVs and a charismatic, a preacher and all of that. And the people there were really nice, and I could like intellectualize aspects of it, and I always felt better, typically after, like, the word of God, things were resonating. But at a certain point, I was in high school, and I wanted something deep. I needed to go deeper. Like, I needed the mystical. I needed something that was beyond just this. we dress nice and we go to this place and listen to worship music on Sunday. And
Yeah.
I didn't really know what that was, but like now I know if somebody would have introduced me to Orthodoxy, it would have blown my mind because it has that. It's the most mystical thing I've ever experienced. But at the
I
time, I
love it.
didn't even know about. I didn't know there was a thing. So I just went, oh, let's eat some mushrooms, and then I'll have. And then you have this experience, and it feels mystical. It feels like
Hmm.
things are being revealed, and you're. And at first, it was just for fun. It was like I just want to see things move, and but I was kind of we just went I went that way, and everything else fell aside. That just kind of became, I discarded it and eventually ended up kind of going into nihilism, and reading a lot of Friedrich Nietzsche, and then kind of saw the fruits of that path.
Yeah.
So but yeah, so I guess, have you encountered resistance, when from either friends or family? Like obviously there's like a change that takes place, and I mean, gosh, I mean, both you and I'd say before, were fairly like liberal in most of our beliefs, like liberal libertarian types, right?
Yeah.
And so to kind of just like be like, I was wrong about all that, and have a totally new worldview. I mean, I don't know. Have you had any like, people you've kind of fallen away from, or have you encountered a lot of resistance, or
Oh,
have most people been pretty, accepting?
man, I've lost so many friends.
Really?
What? And it was during COVID.
Uh-huh.
I lost so many friends on this journey. And but you know what? I gained friends that I love so much, and people that are going through the same thing and realizing the same things at the same time. And to me, like you're my brother. And it's just to see these things happening. It's just I want to. You almost want to like grab people that were your friends when you were younger, that like they're best friends, and be like, listen to me. We always talked about these things, and we like, but then they just boom, you're gone. And it's like,
Yeah.
so all we can do is pray for them. But you know what? God puts people in our lives at the right time so that we can build his church up. And these people that we lose in the process, we pray to God that they come back to us. So I've seen a lot of change, even in my family, with certain people that just don't want to be around because when I'm around them, this is all I want to talk about.
Yeah, me too.
You
It's
know,
like, it's hard. It's like, it
uh,
is.
it's like I want to talk about Christ. I want to talk about the Bible. I want to talk about just the traditions of the church. I want to be like, hey, let's do these things and like let's live together this way. But it's I'm trying not to be pushy,
Mhm.
but it's also like I feel like I kind of need to be sometimes. So I mean,
Well, it
I don't
permeates
know.
everything, right? Like it permeates your entire worldview. So it's hard
Yeah,
to have a conversation about anything and for it not to come up, because it's like, this is just the way I view reality. So
yeah,
if we're going to actually have a real conversation, like I can't, I can't omit this. Just, it's
yeah,
like, it's just how I view the world. It's how I view reality. And that's
exactly.
interesting that like COVID really, the whole thing did kind of, gosh, you saw people, break up friendships over, a difference on masking, or the jibby jabs or whatever. Like, and it's just, I think, but I guess it's one of those things. It's like, I guess if you lose a friend like that, it's like, were you ever really friends to begin with? Because, like I've had, since coming to Christ, I have friends who they don't share my worldview, and I was really ready to just like, if it's a problem, then I'm willing to kind of wash my hands of everybody. Then I guess we're not friends, kind of thing. But even though they don't share my worldview, we've remained friends, and I can sometimes tell when it's like, and I'm just a farmer, man. I'm just planting seeds. I'm planting seeds, and the best seeds will be ones that I think are bore out through your actions, right? It's like, if we're not living it, then what are we doing? It's like, because you can preach all day and it doesn't really,
I think
if
you're way
somebody's
more
not
than
ready to
that.
hear it.
I think you're way more than that, man. You've got a teacher's vibe. So I think that you should understand that you've got something that some people can't do. Um, the way that you can talk and the way you can speak. I'm just saying it from my heart. I
Thank
think
you,
that
man. I
you've got
appreciate
something
that.
else. And I think that you like for me, I can't do that, but I think that you can pull people in and I love what you're doing and I think it's amazing.
Oh, thanks, brother. I mean, I appreciate that, and I don't underestimate yourself, man. I hear the passion in your voice, and you're very well articulate, especially when you're speaking about Christ, because it's coming from the heart, you know. And I agree with you. It's like if you want to get me in a passionate conversation, like that's the thing. Like I almost just can't even stomach like I can't really stomach like idle talk, you know, if it's just about weather. Like I've completely fallen away from sports. Like I can't,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on in sports. I used to be all about football and this and that and fantasy football,
You're
and
like
now I'm
Kobe
just
Bryant's dead?
yeah, dude. I hear, yeah, it's like I just, I'm so out of it, so out of that world. But now I'm looking back and I was like, well, what a massive time sink, you know, like it really makes you reevaluate things and really be like, well, I only have so many hours in the day. And should I really be spending any of it watching a football game? Or could I be doing something better with it? Whether that's just playing with your kids or, you know, like reading a book or you go down the
Yeah.
line. And I get everyone that has their thing to unwind. I'm not trying to put it down. But for me, it was like after 2020 happened, I just lost all interest in like the sports world, and I think even things
Well,
change too, like with your view on like politics and stuff, because you start to like you don't get caught into the dichotomy of like this person or that person. You're just like, oh, both sides are stupid. Christ is king. That's my king. Like that's who I follow. And all this is kind of like it's just a
exactly.
circus. Yeah.
What are you gonna talk about besides eternity? You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about this and that and blah blah blah. Like, yeah, okay, we're living in this world, and yeah, it's fun. We have kids that we need to like. They need to have some fun where they're living. But what are we talking about? You know what I mean? It's like life in eternity is the number one thing. You can gain everything on earth and then lose your soul.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ said that. So what are we focusing on? Are we focusing on what we can gain here, or are we focusing on our eternity?
Yeah,
So,
we should. Yeah, yeah, we get caught up in just the things that are right here, right? And then it's like the only thing that's actually ours is our soul. Like that's the only thing. Like this house isn't mine, my car's not mine, the farm's like this is all going to belong to somebody else in less
mhm.
than I don't know, definitely less than 100 years, and maybe much less than that. Who knows? You know, it's like
Look
so
at all the
it's
farms on the road there, and the farms in North Carolina.
yeah,
All of them, there's so many farms that like they're gone, and those people are most of them are Christian, you know,
yeah.
um,
So
and
yeah,
just
like at the end of the day, no matter what you build, no matter what you work towards, like it's all just it's all gone. But the thing is, if you're putting all your effort towards acquiring things or doing that, but you're neglecting your own soul, at the end of the day, you're neglecting the one thing that actually counts. So it's like, yeah, build and do these things, build a business, build a family, build all these things. That's great, but do it for the sake of building, you know, for the thing
yeah,
in and of itself versus
amen.
trying to achieve some kind of earthly, you know, whatever, because it's all temporary.
Well, that's the
And
thing. There's no earthly glory,
mhm,
you know.
it's all
There's no
vanity.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what's our glorification gonna be? People talk about us later.
You
It's
get a
like,
statue or something.
yeah, exactly. It's like, what? Uh, yeah, so, but it's hard for some people to understand because they haven't really seen or felt it yet. So it's
Yeah.
like, we talk about these things and there's some people who, and there's no judgment. You have to see it. Like you went through your process
Yeah.
of being able to be like, oh wow, now I see it.
Hmm.
So I think what we need to focus on is how can we make people see it?
Yeah. That's the big thing because I could hear somebody talking about Christ and it's like I couldn't hear it. And I could
Yeah.
like sit in church and I remember thinking like this is going in one ear out the other. Like I just wasn't the gospel readings, all that just didn't, it's like my heart wasn't ready. And I think that's the thing is like once you feel it, you have the experience and God bestows his grace upon you, then
Mm-hmm.
it's just like then it flips everything and then you're just like, and I think God really does give people who are searching, I think he gives them a little taste that like really we don't deserve. Like I know for me I got this little taste of just like total just grace and peace and joy. And it's like I wasn't worthy of that, but it was just like all the only thing that I did was I just humbled myself enough. And that's really that I still had, all my sin and all of that, but I had just humbled myself enough um for that door to open. And I think that's all it takes, like because we just have to overcome our pride. That's like the one big obstacle. Because if you can overcome your pride, then God can start to work on all those other things. He can start to pull all those other things off of you. It's not like I came into the church and then it was just like, I shed all of my old life. I had all these passions and all these things that were just deeply entrenched. And it's not like they fell off overnight, but it was just like little by little your heart starts to change and then you like it's not even like these are huge temptations, they start to become like repulsive, like it's just like I don't want it anymore, so it's like I don't like McDonald's is not a temptation for me. It's like I just don't even want it, so but it's kind of becomes that way with other things that once
You get
there's some
disgusted.
pretty deep hooks.
You literally get disgusted by some things,
Yeah,
when you see it and you're like, even though sometimes there's a temptation, at the same time you're disgusted. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Where you're
yeah,
like, I'm tempted to this, but I'm gonna feel so disgusted by going into that temptation, you know?
yeah. Yeah,
And but
your heart starts to change, and therefore it's like, I think it's Saint Porphyrios that his kind of aspect is like, don't try to battle darkness, like don't try to come straight at it and just I'm gonna just like grit my teeth, and he's almost like open up a little like speck of light for God to come into your heart, and then all
Mhm.
that stuff just kind of falls away from you because your heart starts to change, and then it's like you become transformed, and then it's like, and then you see when you fall into you're a little too gluttonous, drank a little too much, whatever it is, you
Mhm.
fall away from God, you feel him just kind of pull back a little bit. Because it's like, well, I can't hang out here. Like the Holy Spirit can't dwell in a vessel that's drunk or a vessel that's filled with anger or lust or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I just has to withdraw a little bit. And then when you've kind of gotten used to that feeling of peace that comes with knowing Christ and accepting Christ in your heart, it's like you almost feel naked. It's almost like that warm embrace has been pulled back and you're like, I miss it. And so,
Yeah.
ideally, like we run back and ask for forgiveness, and God always takes us
Well,
back. And that's,
it's it's like once you have it, you want it, but obviously you're going to push yourself away because of certain addictions or things that you're pulled to. But when you feel the Holy Spirit and you feel Jesus Christ, you feel God the Father, you want that. But because of our human nature and just the things that we've been doing for so long, we get sucked over to these certain spots. But we want to be back there. I mean, and that's the importance of, I think, Orthodoxy and Catholicism. Confession is one of the most important things because confession is you have to confess what you did so that you can receive communion. And I that's the thing with the Protestant church. I mean, I'm not saying anything against Protestants right now, but I think that to be in communion and have to go to confession is one of the hardest things to do because you have
yeah,
to tell somebody. what you did, and you have to be truthful in that situation.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. I mean, it's like, okay, look at all these things I just did, and then you got to go and tell them again
Mhm.
because you got drawn back into it. And they're like,
But
come on.
there's like
I
an
mean,
accountability there, right? And some people
yeah,
say, well, can I just confess to God? And it's like, yes, you should. And you should ask just for forgiveness from God. But there's some added level to having to go to your spiritual father and lay it out. And it's almost like it's like almost like if I catch my kids doing something and I know that they did it, but I'll say,
yeah.
did you do this? Because I want to hear them admit that yes, I did this thing and yes, I'm sorry for it, and so it's like there's
And
that
you're going to forgive
accountability
them
there.
every time.
What's that?
You're going to forgive them every time
Yeah, absolutely. In
because you
fact,
love
it's
them.
so easy to forgive too when they're just like, yes, and I'm really sorry, and it's like that's all I needed. I just that's all I needed. Don't try to justify it. And so we see this like play out on a microcosm between father and child, but it's playing out on this macrocosm between God the Father and us, his children. And so it's like it's really cool. It's like as below, so above. There's these parallels,
Hmm.
and like I said, it's like that's what God wants from us to just be like, yes, like I screwed up, I'm sorry, and please forgive me. And it's just like a broken and contrite heart, God will not despise. It's
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
it's like it's so beautiful, and that's because we're gonna fall, but it's just that we get back up. And I think
Hmm.
confession, yeah, I always feel like 10 pounds lighter. It's amazing. It's just,
But you feel 100 pounds before you go in.
yeah, yeah.
You're like, oh man, I got to do this again. Why? But I that's one thing to me too. Like, because growing up, Calvary Chapel, like Protestant, um, you never had to do that. You could just be like, it's whatever. You're already saved just because you believe. And yeah, we're saved by faith. We're saved by grace. You know, but it's like it holds you the accountability part of confession. I think they need that in Protestant churches too. First of all, all the churches need to come together under one Lord Jesus Christ of Nazareth. But at the same time, we need to be like, hey, we need somebody to hold us accountable. It could be our brother. Like I could just come to you too and be like, hey, I did this, but you can't forgive my sins. You know what I
No,
mean?
only God can forgive sins. And I wouldn't even be
Exactly.
like, you really need like a spiritual father, because even just coming to your brother or
Yeah.
your buddy, it's like they're really not equipped to give you that spiritual guidance.
Yeah.
That's like a big job that just not for a layperson. It's like,
Well,
well, they've got their own stuff that they're struggling with.
they
And
have to have apostolic succession because Jesus gave it to the apostles that they could forgive sins.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. It's like, that's interesting. I don't know. I feel so like on even like questions on theological questions. I'm just like you got to come. You got to come. Just come and talk to Father, and he'll because
Yeah,
I don't want to give somebody wrong advice. Like I'm like a baby Orthodox. Like I'm new to everything, and
I agree. Yeah.
so I'm always just like, yeah, I can talk about my experience. And but like anything more than that, I'm like, but I do think with the whole, with what you mentioned about being saved by faith, or just, like you're already saved, once saved, always saved. Well, that does kind of present some interesting theological questions, because it's like, if you were saved, but then you reject God later on, you change your mind, are you then unsaved? Are you
Oh,
then
no,
saved against your will? So
I
there's,
totally agree with you.
right? And then there's the whole aspect of like, well, if you have true faith, it is going to be shown through works, because
Hmm.
your faith, it's just like, I know this to be true, and I know that I'm going to be held accountable for all these things. And so
Yeah.
it's going to then, that faith should be borne out through your works, because if it's not, and you're not living according to your faith and to your beliefs, it's like, do you really believe it then? Is it
Well,
because
that's the
clearly you
whole
don't?
conundrum. It's like, okay, so they say you're saved by faith, but faith without works is dead. So we have to have works to
Mhm.
prove that we actually believe it. I mean, that's a
Yeah, we're getting into
crazy
it, but
rabbit. We won't do that. But
no, no.
I
But
just think it's important for people to understand. I don't know who's going to be listening and watching, but it's like if you truly believe, look at what just look at the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is the number one thing to listen to and watch and hear. Listen it into every translation that you can get and be like, what do I think about Jesus's number one sermon? What was he saying there? Find the people that you like that can tell you these certain things. Find people you don't like that are telling you certain things about the Sermon on the Mount. But the Sermon on the Mount was the number one sermon that Jesus gave to everyone. So I think meditating on that, praying on the Sermon on the Mount is something that's very important for the Christian faith.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you got back from work, you got little kiddos you probably want to see before you put them to bed. But brother, it's been great talking to you, and I always enjoy our conversations, and it's beautiful hearing about you and your family coming to Christ. And I wish you guys the best on your journey. And if it's God's will for you to come back to North Carolina, I hope another spot up the road opens up, man, because I'd love to have you back here.
I hope so. We have the option to do it, but we're the baby's coming, so we're trying to figure it all out. But
I totally get it, man. Well, glory be to God. That's beautiful. And yeah, man, just thanks for chatting. It's been good.
well, thank you. I love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
See ya.
Bye.